Hi, my name is Julia Hanzlick, and I am a corporate trainer for ReeceNichols Real Estate. I want to talk to you about the test. What does a test look like? I think sometimes students underestimate the test. There are two portions that you have to pass in Missouri. That is the national test and the state test. Now, on the national portion, we tend to see that the questions are a little more broad, not as specific. Now, on the Missouri side, just the Missouri test, you tend to get into more of the rules and regulations. Now, it has something really good to tell you. If you don't pass both portions of the test, you only have to take the test that you didn't pass. So let's say you go in for the very first time and you pass the national, but you do not pass the state. Well, funny enough, you only have to take the portion you didn't pass. So you're done with the national at that point. You go back in and you pass your Missouri test. All right, let's talk about some key components to the Missouri test. The first one is memorize the key agency relationships. The agency relationships are so important on the Missouri test, both on the state and the national. It's something we focus on. We like to say that you have to know what you're doing in real estate, and everybody has to know your role in real estate. And to do that, we need to understand the agency. So one of the number one questions on the test is, what is agency and what does that look like? Types of agency are the seller's agent, and the seller agent predominantly works with the seller and only the seller. The X agency is buyer's agency. The buyer's agent works with the buyer through the process of buying a house. So we like to say, if you're going to be a seller's agent, you put on a seller's hat. If you're going to be a buyer's agent, you put on a buyer's hat. That way, everybody knows your role in agency, and you need to know to pass the test. Dual agency. In dual agency, it's a little bit different. You actually sign a buyer's agency with the buyer and the seller's agency with the seller, and you work through the transaction as a dual agent. So excitingly enough, you're working with both sides of the transaction. Lastly, we have what is called a designated agent. A designated agent is somebody that is designated to work with only one client. So you can be a buyer's designated agent, or you could be a seller's designated agent, but you know specifically you're only working with that one person, and you are the only one at your agency working with that person. These terms will help you through the test and give you a good score. Now I'm going to look at our fiduciary responsibilities. Do you know that when you become a real estate licensee, you have a fiduciary obligation to your client, and it's an extremely important one. It's just the same as what doctors and lawyers have with their clients. You are now at a role that if you have entered into agency with a client, you have to hold their needs up to the utmost responsibility. So we have a thing that we call COLD. We see it in property management, we see it in real estate, and we see it about everywhere in this business. So COLD stands for care, obedience, accounting, loyalty, and disclosure. Let's talk about that. Care. Reasonable care when you're working with clients. This means you're putting them before your own self. You are helping them get through the transaction, giving them the information they need, and taking care of them to the best of their ability. Obedience. Did you know when you sign that agency agreement with your client, you are actually signing an employment agreement with your client? So you owe them obedience. So if they say that you can't show the house in the evenings from 7 to 9 p.m., you need to follow their guidance and their request. Accounting for money is so important in a real estate transaction. You need to know where the earnest money deposit is going. You need to make sure that everything is coming through on the closing statement for your clients, so that when they're sitting at the closing table, it's not a stressful situation and they know exactly what to expect. The next one is loyalty. You show complete loyalty to your clients, just like a doctor and attorney would show to their clients. This loyalty does not end at the end of the relationship. When you close this house, you show loyalty beyond that. That means you don't talk about personal information after the situation is over. The last one is disclosure, full disclosure to this individual. So you are working with them at the utmost fiduciary responsibility. So in this process, you are giving them all the information you possibly know. So if you happen to hear the seller say something and you're helping a buyer, you let the buyer know right then. You always give them all the information up front. Some other really important things for the test. Contracts are a huge section on the test. So you need to walk through what is a valid contract? What does a contract look like? What makes a contract voidable or null and void? How long is this contract good? Basic knowledge of listing agreements, purchase agreements. Those are things that we specifically look at in the test prep class to get you ready to take the test. I will tell you more and more, and it is important, we're seeing a lot of fair housing test questions on there. It is extremely important for you to understand the 7 protected classes. In this process, we walk through each one and why they're important. Then we also look at key components like block busting, steering, moving buyers away from neighborhoods they want to be in. Those are really big key factors on the test, and honestly, they're big factors in today's world. Testing strategies that will help you pass the test. So I love giving my students testing strategies. A lot of them have been out of school for a long time. So we look at the basic test taking strategies. And that is, you look at the question, you read the question twice, you read all 4 multiple choice answers, and then you pick your best answer. I will tell you on the test, there is a good answer and there's always a better answer. So if you're not reading those twice, you're going to miss the better answer, which means you're going to, in essence, miss that question. Secondly, I tell my students to take a deep breath, pull from the knowledge they know, use the process elimination. And if you remember when you took the ACT back in high school, and maybe that wasn't long ago for you, but you knew that you had to use the process elimination, and that's how you were successful on the ACT. But overall, I want you to go in feeling prepared. So in that 4 to 8 hour training class, we will walk through sample test questions. You might even see something that's similar to what we have in class on the actual Missouri real estate test. All right, let's look at a little vocabulary today that we see on the test all the time. Let's talk about the first one. The first one is a lien. A lien is a legal claim against a property as security for a debt. The next vocabulary word is deed. A deed is a written legal document used to transfer ownership for real property. I want to give you another tip on deed. They typically call a deed an instrument. The next vocabulary word is title. Title is the legal ownership rights to a property, often referred to as the bundle of rights. Now we have police power, and no, I'm not talking about your local police force. Police power in real estate is the government's authority to take and regulate land for use to protect the public. The next vocabulary word is agency. A legal relationship with a real estate license representing a client. Agency. Easement. Easement is the legal use or right to land. Adverse possession, acquiring ownership of property by openly occupying it without the owner's permission. So this would be almost like squatters' rights. Eminent domain, the government power to take private property for public use. So you know that big highway you see? The government took that property to build that highway. It was for the good of the public. The last vocabulary word we're going to look at today is encumbrance. It's any claim, restriction, or limitation that affects the title to the property. All right, so I want to tell you something different about our school. We really do focus a little bit on math, and we have some tools and techniques. I'm going to go over one of those with you today. This is going to make or break your test. Unfortunately, the Missouri test does have a considerable amount of math questions on it. So to start with, I'd like to show you something that we use to teach our students specifically to help them with the math and where to place the questions and the answers. So it's called the T formula. We love the T formula. The T formula specifically tells you where you need to put the numbers. So you will draw what it is. It's a T, and you will put your rate on the right side So this is your rate, your percentage. Rate on the right, R&R. Then we're going to put our large number on the left, L and L. Large number goes on the left. On the top, we want to put our small number there. So small number goes across the top. The way to remember this is if you put a large number on the top, it's going to crush the T formula. So once again, it's rate on the right, large number on the left, and small number on top. When you have your numbers placed like this, if it is the small number you have and one of these numbers, this is an up and down, you will always divide. If you have these two numbers, side by side numbers, and you're trying to find the other number, you're going to multiply. So right now, I gave you a cheap way to get through the math on the real estate test. So let's go ahead and do an example. A sale closes on May 23rd, with the seller paying the day at close on all items prorated between the buyer and the seller. The buyer is assuming the seller's mortgage, which has a $160,000 balance on the day of closing. The last mortgage payment was May 1st. The annual interest rate is 4.25%, with interest always paid in arrears. And arrears means after you use the interest. How does the proration appear on the buyer's closing statement? So this is an interest question. So number one step, I'm going to figure the daily interest. So that is where I'm going to start. Step two, I'm going to do the T formula. So I plug in the numbers I have. So I have the interest rate given to me in the problem. So I know I have my rate, which goes on the right. I also know my large number, which was $160,000. And since I have these two numbers, what I'm going to do, I'm going to multiply, which is going to give me $6,800 of annual interest. At this point, remember how I said I had to figure my daily interest? I'm going to come over here on step 3 and figure the $6,800 divided by 360. Why would I divide it by 360? Well, another little tip is the Missouri test uses a testing year of 360 days instead of 365 days. Wow, I think I probably just blew some people's mind. That's going to give me $18.88 a day for interest. And I will come down here and add in 23 days of interest. So I take my $18.88 multiplied by 23 days. And where did I get 23? Well, we close on May 23rd. Equals $434.47. And that is the answer to my problem. We have some sample test questions for you. These would be good to look at and go through, and it'll give you an idea of what you're going to see on the test and kind of example for the wording. So on the test, they specifically work to maybe confuse you a little bit or send you a wrong direction so you miss the question. They really do want to see statistically a lower score on the first time we take the test. So we're going to beat that. First question is, which of the following is not protected under the federal fair housing? So is it A, religion, B, marital status, C, disability, or D, familial status? Which one is not protected under there? It would actually be B. Marital status is not protected under federal fair housing. Number 2, who does the agent represent? A licensee lists a property for a seller. A buyer calls and asks to see the home. The agent shows the property, and without signing a buyer agency agreement, who does the agent actually represent in this situation? We have A, the buyer, B, the seller, C, both the buyer and the seller automatically represent, and D, no one. The answer is actually B. It's the seller. That one was a little tougher, wasn't it? The next question is, what is dual agency allow and when? When the Missouri real estate licensee acts as a dual agent, is it A, anytime both parties? No. Or B, only with the written permission from both parties? Or C, only the brokers gives permission for dual agency? Or D, never in Missouri? It's B, only when both parties are well informed and it is written permission that they have allowed you to move into dual agency. Now remember, dual agency is allowed in Missouri, the entire state. Number 4, earnest money is typically held by A, the buyer, B, the seller, C, the broker, or D, the lender. Who holds that earnest money? It is actually C. The broker is the one that holds the earnest money. So as soon as you as a licensee get that earnest money deposit, you give it directly to the broker. Number 5, what is material fact? Material fact is which situation requires disclosure. There's a lot of things that need to be disclosed in real estate. So material fact would be which one? A, a murder in the home of 10 years ago. B, a leaking basement and the water comes in the home and the homeowner knows. C, the seller is getting divorced. D, the sellers lost money on the home. Which one is it? It is B, a leaking basement must be disclosed up front. All right, on to the next one. Let's look at one about commission. A real estate commission can legally be paid to who? A, by a licensee's real estate broker, B, any real estate salesperson, or C, the buyer, or D, the attorney. Who pays the real estate commission? It's actually the realtor's broker, pays you directly at all times. All right, and moving on to number 7, what makes a contract valid? Well, which is not a requirement for a valid real estate contract? Is it A, offer and acceptance, B, consideration, C, competent parties, or D, notarization? It would be D. You do not have to notarize a contract for it to be valid and enforceable from the MRAC, right? And next, we're moving on to a steering question. Steering is A, encouraging buyers to look only in a specific neighborhood. B, helping buyers find homes in good schools. C, showing homes in different price ranges. Or D, explaining market trends. Well, the best answer here is A. Steering is when you specifically steer certain buyers away from certain neighborhoods. All right, the next one. When does a listing agreement end? A, the property sells. B, the broker dies. C, the expiration date arrives. Or D, all the above. Well, this one's a bit of a trick question. It's all the above. Every single one of those is a problem and will expire or cancel the agreement. And lastly, what is the broker responsible for? A, only their own actions. B, the actions of the salesperson. C, only advertising. And D, only escrow funds. It's actually B. A broker's job in Missouri is to supervise the salespersons that work under them. The broker holds the licenses, and so there is responsibility to be a direct supervision the entire time that the salesperson is working under them. Well, I hope you've been able to pick little bits and pieces that were super helpful for you today. I'm excited for your future. I'm excited for you to start a new career, and I hope that our little tidbits give you just that extra motivation and extra confidence as you go in to take your test. Just remember, it's not the end of the world if you have to retake that test, but what we do want to see is you pass the test and move into a new and exciting career.